Hey, welcome back from Pakistan. Let's do some taxes, man.
This is Auto Collabs.
Michael, I'm so glad that is this the first piece of content you've made since you've come back
Yes.
from Pakistan?
The first piece of content since coming back from Pakistan. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is.
I think since it's the first time, I think you need to reach back and grab the hat. All right, if you're only listening, there is a hat. If I were to explain it, I'm going to disrespect it by explaining it. So I'm going to let Michael explain it. He's putting it on right now. Okay, I'll explain it. It looks like a mashup between a sailor's hat, a mummer's hat, and you might not know what a mummer's hat is. It's a Philly thing.
Okay.
And a headdress.
Yeah. So when I arrived in Pakistan, they greeted me. My team there greeted me with this hat and a kind of a scarf and flowers and this is something that they would wear to dress up. It's kind of a traditional hat. I can't remember what it's called, but a beautiful gift nonetheless.
And now it's hanging in the background, and it's a part of all of your content now.
Part of all the content now. And yeah, I'm excited to be back behind the mic. It's funny when you do content creation the way that we do content creation. It's funny how often when you're not sitting at your mic, you reach for a mic, even though there's no mic there.
That's so true.
Like I'd be in my hotel room and I would my arm would shoot out.
Where's
and
the
I'm
mic?
not grabbing for it. I'm not because I'm so used to grabbing the mic and pulling it into shot. So there you go.
Well, I think it's appropriate. I mean, and I know more of your stories. We got to share a few of them before the show today, but there is a distinct line about what it is to be human, what it is to connect from human to human, and what the reality of a situation is versus what the stigma of a situation is. And I think today's guest is going to highlight that, because Sam Dark with Zeigler Auto Group, he is a COO for a large group. I mean, they have 70, 80 stores, and they have the highest rating on Glassdoor. How do you do that?
And yeah, I mean, I don't know how that's even
I don't either.
It's hard for just any old business to get a high rating like that on Glassdoor, right?
Yep.
Especially this day and age when people will complain about their 50-cent IKEA hot dog that the mustard wasn't yellow enough or whatever. So the fact that he's able to do that, I think, really underscores what you just said. We're excited to chat with him more about that and see how they've achieved that. So we hope you enjoy this episode with Sam Dark. Okay, so the other night, my wife and I watch a new Amazon Prime documentary about Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks. And I learned all sorts of things about him that I just really grow to appreciate. One is the humility with which he approaches the game, but that humility stems from having to go through and experience hardship. Now you know where I'm going with this leading setup and question. And that just creates such a compelling story about him. And I come to read some of the notes here about you, Sam. And one of the notes that stands out right out of the gates is you started washing cars after your parents kicked you out of the house at age 17.
Oh no. Where'd you get that note? Where did that come from?
And I gotta ask you about it now.
Oh my gosh.
The internet.
Don't give me the details about why you got kicked out.
What'd you think we were going to talk about inventory management?
This is gotcha journalism. That's fascinating.
I feel like I need to ask about this because I think what a tremendous now story we get to see the today version.
Yeah.
But what do you tell us about that? Like, what do you learn along the way that gets you from washing cars at 17 to being the COO of Zeigler?
Michael, you always ask the hard. You're not allowed to
awesome.
start the episodes anymore.
I
had to know. I'm dying to know.
I love it. So you know, here's what you learn. First of all, who doesn't at some point get kicked out of some sort of a community or some sort of a group at some young age?
Only
right?
if you're doing it right.
It's a little bit of trauma, it's a little bit of excitement, but it helps you to become your absolute best. In fact, there's a guy who wrote a book called The Coffee Bean, and he says you meet the best version of yourself on the other side of adversity. And here's what I learned. I learned this auto industry is awesome. There is no other business
Amen.
like automotive. This is the last great American industry.
Let's go. You get me fired up now.
That's right. Meaning you can come into this with any type of a background. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter your education. It doesn't matter your experience level. And if you want to work and you're willing to focus and give it your all, this thing will give you that and more. And I found that as a kid washing cars. It's crazy. I tell this story. It was an Isuzu dealership before the Trooper rolled over, before the Trooper was found to roll over in the early 90s. And they closed the road in front of the dealership because they were doing construction. And I was out washing cars, taking the dash sweat off the inside of these Isuzu Troopers and rodeos and all that. And customers would come on the lot, and salespeople would not be there to help them because the road was closed. They were out at lunch. They were off doing other things. And I, as this young kid, just started talking to people and answering questions and helping. And I learned in that minute, it didn't matter if I wore shorts or jeans or if my shoes were wet every single day. I could help connect people with cars, and I could help solve their problems. And then I had these sales guys that saw I was willing to stay on the lot. They started splitting deals with me. And that summer, right before I went to college, I went to the dealer, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to sell cars.
Yeah, you're like,
he's
here's
like,
the sponge, here's
That's
the
right.
hose. Right.
He's like, no, you're not going to sell cars. You're going to do another year as a lot guy, and then you can sell. And on the last day before I was going to leave before I started college, he said, fine. This was back in the day when it was super tough to break into a car dealer floor, when everybody was old and veteran and seniority was
Someone
a big
had to
deal.
retire or die.
Yes, yes. And he let me in. And the thing I was super proud of is for the few years I was there through college, from that minute, nobody ever beat me in sales. I crushed it.
Wow.
And I love this business because of that. I tell our teams this all the time. If you want it in this business, you can have it. You just got to go get it. There's more than anyone will ever be able to get. And that's what I love about this business, man. So great question. I love that.
Every episode.
Nobody's
the first question.
Okay.
Nobody started
I think we're
with
done
that.
here.
I mean,
love it.
that's all Nathan though. Nathan dug that one up, so we got to give him props.
Good job, Nathan.
So look, there's an obvious correlation between your vision for what, not even just a vision. It's like it's not vision. It's not idealism. It's the actual existence of your experience firsthand in this industry, which seems to drive the fact that you kind of talk about vision a lot. You talk about leadership and where things could be a lot. You have your own, you're host of the Driving Vision podcast where you talk to people about, you use it as an internal communication tool. There are, if our count is correct, 78 franchises under your purview.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
78 franchises, 41 stores, 4 states, 2,700 employees, and founded by Harold Zeigler back in 1975. His son, Aaron Zeigler, in the early 2000s took it over and has just crushed it. So Aaron is the dealer. He's active every single day growing this empire. And I get the great privilege of just working alongside everybody that is part of Team Zeigler. And
so you also have a restaurant, and you're one of the top places to work on Glassdoor as a car dealership. How does your experience in the beginning, like in what you just kind of walked us through, how do you feel like that kind of like comes out every single day as you look at all of these employees and all of this potential? Because people like you see potential, right? More than you see what is. How does that actually spill out? How do you lead the organization to cultivate those elements in an operational sense?
So I want to be absolutely super clear, right? So Aaron Zeigler, he's the owner. He runs this thing. Like, I work with him. This is his organization. Again, I have the privilege of helping lead alongside. One of the things he taught me early on when I made the transition. So I went from retail as a lot guy to sales guy to I actually worked for a Swiss-based insurance company that sold auto dealers insurance and finance. Traveled all around the country working with the largest dealer groups on the face of the planet Earth. And at the beginning of COVID, I got frustrated at some of the restrictions that were put out there for big corporations. And I'm like, look, I want to go out and work. This is time to work. It's time to get,
so our people.
It's time to get more market share. It's not time to sit in your basement and wait for this thing to pass. And Aaron's like, dude, come work with us. Like, let's go. And so, you talk about vision. Aaron has lived this, and I echo it. It's, if you have a vision that is massive about a goal or something you're looking to achieve and accomplish, you don't need to sit and micromanage people. You don't need to sit and over-explain financial statements or metrics or anything else. If you create a vision so compelling that it inspires people, they will come running to be part of that, and they'll be inspired by that, and they'll give their heart and soul for it. The story we always tell on our podcast is, you think about JFK back in the beginning of the space race. JFK wanted absolutely nothing to do with going to the moon. He, though, saw that the Russians were about ready to go, and he knew that they put the first satellite up in space. They put the first man up in space. I think they put the first monkey up in space.
They did.
It was supposed to be Russian that was spoken on the moon when the first human beings went there, if you believe they did, which I do. It's crazy. It's people, conspiracy theorists thinking that it never happened. And JFK,
different podcast.
That's right. That's a different show.
Same mic, different podcast.
That's right. Same year too. Yeah, that's funny. JFK stood in front of the country and he said, guys, gals, everybody, we've got to go to the moon in a decade, not because it'll be easy, but because it'll be worth it. And it will bring together everybody's talents. And people will discard their religious backgrounds and their cultural and their ethnic and everything else that splits people apart. It'll bring them together, and we'll accomplish something that's never been done before on the face of the planet. And if you've seen a movie like Hidden Figures, there were people that were marginalized back then in the 60s that said, I don't care. Let's do this thing. And we did it, and it changed the face of the world. And the first words spoken on the moon were English by Americans. And if that doesn't make you proud and excited to be American, I don't know what does. And it's that same vision that can drive us today in the automotive industry that continues to drive us. And really, people, I don't know if you've seen it, for a long time, people have said, hey, computers are going to replace humans in selling cars. You'll be able to go online and there will be no human interaction. I call BS. I don't think that's true. I think this industry is uniquely human, and technology will help us deliver our best selves. But at the end of the day, it's that human connection and that potential that we realize in connecting that makes this auto industry great, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love what you're saying here, because it's almost like every effort we make as a civilization to remove the human element, just more deeply validates our desire, our inherent desire to have human connection. Like we can't ruin it. We're already. I mean, do you guys remember the metaverse?
Yeah.
How quickly that went. Yeah. Gone.
I think one car was sold in the metaverse, kind of ish.
Yeah, kind of ish. And then it took all of 27 seconds for us to be like, wait, I actually want to talk to somebody. I want to look at somebody. I want to shake their hand. I want to,
It's not just the metaverse. I mean, you look at all the promises that technology made to us in the last 5 years,
right.
even around like digital retail, as we call it, and how easy it will be to not come to the dealership, and kind of the Carvana promise. And what we're actually seeing now, the data showing that the dealership visit, the in-person visit, is the most impactful element and the most enjoyable element that influences purchase, influences decision to Gen Z buyers.
Yeah.
Right? And we would have all told you there's no way that's true 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And I think that in retail, that's a base layer of transaction. Let me get a price. Let me pick out a product, right? Let me set when I'm going to get it delivered. That's like the base level. And we don't even humans are pushing back on that base level. We want to do shopping, but so to think technology is going to solve the problem. And I don't want to speak to a salesperson. There's just no way. I do not believe that at all.
Now, technology has its place.
Without
technology as a salesperson can help me get you all the information and more. I don't have to, you remember back in the so I was selling in the 90s. Like, I would accidentally share something that just wasn't true, right? Like, I think this is, I can't even think about what it was, but there were things back. Technology now can help me get information about every vehicle out there and convey that and relay that to the customer in a way that in the history of mankind, we've never had it before. So it has its place, but it can't replace us. People still want to come in and see me, right? And you.
It's literally the same. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm just picturing now, there are people to this day who are like, I'm still trying to figure out, did Sam say that if I told my car, go gadget,
Remember that.
lift, that I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe you didn't tell us the whole truth there.
To those people who bought a Kia Sophia for me in 1995, manual transmission, no air, $54.95. I can't remember, there was probably some little bit of, I know what it was. We told him it had a Ford Festiva engine in it, which I actually think was true, but I've never, there was no internet to Google it back then. It was all dial-up.
So I was like, if he said so, it must be the case. I think there's a very interesting correlation that happens that comes from one of the first things you said about adversity.
Yeah.
Being, what was it about the coffee bean?
We meet the best version of ourselves on the other side of adversity. Damon West, the coffee bean. Yeah.
I also think that you could replace technology like in that sentence and say we can meet the best version of ourselves as a sales professional on the other side of technology.
Ooh.
Lots of caveats there, like if it's deployed property. But, people have had this conversation. I've had it with many people about the use of AI tools like ChatGPT, saying like it could be the source of a bunch of bad information. It could create laziness in producing things, or it could be the most powerful assistant you've ever had.
Oh, I use it every day.
And so like, I really do think like the best version of the sales process is on the other side of technology. And when you pair like this empathy with the right technology, people should feel like it's just all effortless.
Paul, that's a great quote. I'm stealing that.
Yes, I'm going to attribute that to you.
Meet the best version of our sales.
We have it recorded, by the way. So
I love it.
You know what though? Like you bring up a good point that I think about, and it is clearly in my observation always tends to be the differentiator between organizations that blow up and organizations that stay stagnant is that the people that accelerate quickly are so dialed into their soft skills. That's where they put the most of their energy and attention. And to your point about technology and ChatGPT and making it our assistant or our intern, like this would be my war cry to everybody that's listening to this. Like use it as your assistant so that you can actually now focus most of your time developing those soft skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is the thing you spend less time doing because you're so focused on product knowledge and, insert miscellaneous whatever here.
The cool part about the auto industry is we're so afraid of being not replaced, but like we're so focused on continuing to do what we do that those threats, we find ways to navigate through them so that we become better through them, right?
Give us an example. Give us an example of that.
Oh no, you would say that. I mean, the thing that comes off the top of my mind is, we do a podcast. It's called the Driving Vision Podcast externally, and then we have one internally. It's every single week. And after a few weeks of doing that, I was like, you know what? People have got to be sick and tired of hearing just my voice. And I couldn't get everybody within the auto group to contribute initially. So I went to AI and I came up with a AI generated voice. People love it. They had no idea for the first 3 months that it was AI generated. So the intro and the outro and some of the news, we deliver news every single Monday morning to Team Zeigler vis-a-vis our internal podcast. It was by this cool British AI
I knew
voice.
it was going to be a Brit. I knew it.
You can't tell the difference. It's awesome. People love it. And
they feel sophisticated.
Yeah. So,
every sentence starts with "Morning, Governor."
That's right. And I actually cloned the voice of our head of BDC, Lindsay Latsko, in the Chicagoland. So sometimes she delivers the news.
Can you send? I need to hear this.
Yeah, we need to hear this.
We need to hear some links.
Absolutely.
He's like, well, I have one right here.
Let me ask you this, Sam. Kind of quasi shifting gears here a little bit because I am intrigued by. You said 1975 is when
correct
Zeigler started. So I mean, there are so many single point dealers who have been around since the 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. What do you think has differentiated Zeigler from some of those single points that like they've been around, same amount of time, but like, and we're in America, for crying out loud, the land of opportunity. Yeah. What was it? What was the maneuver that took Zeigler to where it is today and keeps those dealerships, you think, where they're at?
So 2 things. Number 1, the owner, Aaron Zeigler, has absolutely no fear. In fact, he commonly says on our podcast, he says the biggest mistake most people make is not going in enough, not being big enough, not having big enough goals and dreams. And he's like, we will not make that mistake. And he's never made that mistake. If you think back over the last decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, every single one of us probably would have been bolder, bigger, broader, and probably would have capitalized on that, right? So timing has played a huge thing into it. Aaron absolutely is fearless, ferocious, and we just continue to grow. The second thing is we 100% respect every single employee. That's the reason we get the Glassdoor endorsement that we have best. We're the highest ranked auto dealer on Glassdoor for work-life balance. Think about that. In the auto industry, in retail auto industry, who has work-life balance, right? But but we're and where that comes from is at the GM level, at the sales manager level, finance, porter's office, there is ownership. Not financial, because he owns the entire group, but there is ownership for what you do and the work product you put out. And when I feel ownership as a general manager, I show up to work every single day to win and to deliver a great result. I personally put my name on that, and I think, I look at all the auto groups I've worked with over my 20-year career at that Swiss insurance company, and Aaron is unique in his ability to deliver that ownership to the individual, to respect them and allow them to grow a business that crushes it. So I think those 2 things. I think ownership and just fearless growth.
There's a word, Michael and I and Kyle, who's not here, we're kind of amateur theologians, and there's a word that kind of rings true to me when you say ownership, because I love that word, but it's a word, the word agency.
Oh yeah.
And meaning that I can do things that affect the outcomes of the next things. Yeah. Right. And I have decision-making capability, and I have this level of agency over how things are going to go. And when people show up with that, it's funny when the hopelessness that happens so often in the workplace, broad statement, is when people feel like they have no control over what happens next. And they're just kind of a pinball in a pinball machine, and I'm just going to wait for the next time the trigger gets pulled and I get knocked over here, knocked over there, and at some point I'll fall through and I'll just reset at another job or reset at another career. And I mean, we could just keep going and talk about why government employment doesn't work well. But
what do you think the biggest threat to agency is? Because I think this is fascinating. I agree with you. I love that word, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. Write that one down too. The biggest threat to agency, it is, it's actually a very similar word. It's control.
Yeah.
Which is very strange.
Which comes from a super insecure leader.
Ooh.
So
there you go.
So you look at some of the worst people you've worked for, or worst cultures, or the poorest work environments, and it's an insecure leader that feels like they have to, Paul, you said it right. I love it. They got to control everything because that's their job. And I got to tell you what to do and make sure you're doing it.
Their identity and their self-esteem is wrapped up in that control.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to get here.
The employee bill of rights, if you want to call it that, is let me have that agency to act in my world and change the world and be awesome. There are some people that are like, well, I'm just a porter, right? Like that doesn't mean anything. BS.
It means everything.
Is like, that's a clean car. That's a ride somewhere. That's
Everyone's always looking to you for something.
Yeah.
You have control over everything.
So I debate. I've been on some shows and we've debated, hey, there are some valuable jobs and there are some worthless jobs. And I don't believe that. I think every single job in the car dealership, which is the world we're in, is super important. And the only way we succeed is if everybody's doing their job. So.
Well, Sam, I feel like we could keep going for another hour easily. I can't wait till we get to spend some time in person because I know how the conversation is going to go. Sal, thank you so much for just being a beacon of leadership in the industry and giving us a few moments of your time today on Auto Collabs.
Thanks for allowing me to be here. It was a heck of a lot of fun, and I have some quotes. I've written them down, and I'm going to use them, Paul and Michael. Thank you both.
I mean, but like, how about Nathan with the investigative journalism?
When you asked him that first question, you were halfway through that question, and I'm watching his body language, and he said, talk about gotcha journalism, I think is what he said. Yeah. And I was like, where did Nathan find this? Like, I assumed he found it on the internet somewhere.
He's Columbo.
Yeah. he's an amateur private detective. Yeah.
Actually, now you're going to know every time you walk past Nathan's office over there and you see just like manila folders on his desk, you're going to realize they're actually like case files.
Cigarette smoke coming out of the office. Right, a trench coat hanging on the door. No, but the reality of Sam's transparency and obvious commitment to developing people on the human side, I feel like we need to visit there now because I can't believe we hadn't met before this because he's so like-minded.
Some of the things that, well, and I mean, like just to, you know, some of his thought processes. What was the quote? I wish I wrote it down. It was that we
coffee bean one.
No, well, we discover the best version of ourselves on the other side of adversity.
That's it.
That's not something you just read in a book that you think sounds good and then you repeat. That's something you live. That's something you experience.
You believe it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's deeply rooted in you. And then you fast forward to nearing the end of the conversation, and it is clear that the reason they have, what did he say, the best work-life balance of
work-life balance rating? Yes.
Like what? And the reason that maps to Glassdoor and those sorts of things is because they really believe it. They really live it. And he brought up some points that I think should hit close to home for a lot of operators in this business. Just calling it how it is. Part of us building our community is raising awareness around certain issues. One of them is that insecurity from a leadership level.
Wow. Yeah, that was big.
That has a rainfall effect on the rest of the organization. Like, how many organizations have you and I walked in where at some point or another, somebody goes like, I'm afraid for my job today.
Oh my gosh. You think I'm getting fired? And to be clear, like that sentiment, like we'll tie it back to our buddy Seth Godin, who calls it the lizard brain. When your boss says, hey, can you come see me for a minute? You don't think, oh, he's finally going to realize all the great work I've been doing and give me a promotion. It's like, you don't ever think that. You think I'm in trouble, right? And with the best leaders, when you say, can you come in my office for a second? The human mind goes to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So that's just multiplied when there's a level of ego coming from the C-suite, a level of control that's coming from the C-suite. How can you expect people to find any balance in a situation like that? I don't know, but Sam seems to have it figured out. And
yeah, it's the essence of top-down leadership. We talk all about it. We got to experience some of that talking to him firsthand, which is very, very refreshing. Fun guy. Man, I definitely want to be able to go and check out some of their stores. Hopefully we get to connect with them at ASOTU. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint, poke, poke, Sam. But we hope you enjoyed this episode of Auto Collabs. On behalf of Paul J. Daly and myself, Michael Cirillo, and of course, the invisible, but here in heart, mind, and spirit, Kyle Mountsier. Thanks so much for joining us on Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?